You have probably heard this story before. When I was 26 years old, a long time ago, I was in the habit of hiking alone through trails in the mountains around Chattanooga, Tennessee. Chattanooga is kind of like the Lehigh Valley. It's a flat, mostly flat area surrounded by hills. I wanted to explore those experiences in community. But which one? All of the religious communities in the area were variants of Christianity, mostly of the fundamentalist variety. Judaism, New Age, or a couple of Buddhist groups. None of these options appealed to me. I was exploring the idea of God. I would be glad to learn more about non-Western religions and mysticism, but I did not want to be tied to one path, to hear only one truth. The other reality was that most religions of the late 1980s were still not where I was when it came to social justice and human nature. Most had a pietistic perspective. They were concerned with the adherents' connection to God and Jesus, but had little interest in the social order or human suffering or the environmental crisis. Most of the religions in the South were only interested in condemning gays and lesbians, putting Christian prayer back into public schools, and limiting the possibilities of women's lives. I definitely felt then that a faith community should address social issues and advocate for justice. This was personal. In first and second grades, I attended a segregated elementary school in Georgia. In third grade, the state public schools were forced to integrate with Black and white kids, learning and playing together. I was glad to meet African American kids, and by knowing them, I cared about them and their rights. Similarly, a year before my spiritual experiences, a friend came out of the closet to me. Those two experiences at different times in life caused me to care about the lives of others. Put succinctly, any religion that I joined would have to care about Black people and gay and lesbian people. I knew them personally and I had friends. Any religion that I joined would have to strive for justice for all people, no exceptions. In the Deep South in 1989, there seemed to be no religious group that could do all that. Open to an undefined quest for God? None. Open to justice for all people, including women, gays, and lesbians? None. Remember, these were days before the internet. You found out about a spiritual community from a friend inviting you to church, or advertising, or research at the library, or chance. My former college roommate told me that I sounded like a Unitarian Universalist. He was right. Unitarian Universalist churches attract people for different reasons. Some seek a spiritual home that will explore differing beliefs. Even if someone has taken a theological position, there is still the opportunity in many Unitarian Universalist settings to discover religious traditions that are not considered in other churches. There's also the possibility to discover religious practices that might change one's belief systems. For a small number of people, there's a depth in the Christian tradition of Unitarian Universalism that fosters love and affirmation of all in the world. Most Unitarian Universalists were reared in Christian traditions or no tradition at all. Some are not welcoming to these traditions, even though they were the foundation of our movement's original faiths. There are people in the Unitarian Universalist churches who come through the door because they have been wounded by another faith tradition. We are often a haven for people who have experienced the negative impact of religion. Though Unitarian Universalist churches are not explicitly about group therapy, There are people who will walk with us because they know that they will not be condemned for believing in a religious creed, for not believing in a religious creed or doctrine or any other binding belief or practice. Some seek a church that will affirm them in a world that is often hostile to differing identities. Some will come to a Unitarian Universalist church because they seek affirmation of who they are and their family is in a welcoming congregation to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning persons. They seek not just to be known for these reasons, but also be known for themselves in community. A goodly number of people have come into Unitarian Universalist churches because they have children to rear and want a community of open-minded people to counter the dominant culture of the area that is not tolerant to all. Some of the people will also come because they'd like their children to learn traditional Jewish and Christian stories, and also stories about religions from the world. They want their children to have a religious foundation and also freedom to consider other ideas. They want their children to grow up comfortable with people of goodwill who are different from themselves. Some people will go to a Unitarian Universalist church because they seek a community that combines faith with social justice. They want to belong to a church that makes space available for differing groups in the community. They'd want to be with their fellow congregants at protest rallies, at meetings with politicians, at service opportunities, at the soup kitchen, about which you will hear more later. They want to have friendly travelers with them as they advocate and serve for the common purpose of good for all. Some people go to a Unitarian Universalist church because they need to sing. This is true for many religious groups. The only Christian denomination that I'm aware of that does not sing in worship is the Quakers, who prefer silence. Yeah, there is a power for many of us in singing words that connect us with our spirituality, that connect with our community. I'm a terrible singer, or so I've been told. But singing still moves me. When I served the congregation that ordained me in New Hampshire, one of my spiritual disciplines, for at least 1 hour each week, was to go and take an old hymnal into the white clapboard meeting house on the top of a hill and sing old Unitarian hymns loudly and very out of key. These were the old ones. The more dust on the pages, the better. The ones that ended with Amen, signifying their words were also a prayer. Hymns, though, are words of inspiration. When we sing them together, we are connecting more than just with words. We are connecting with our breath and the movement of our bodies, even we stiff Unitarian Universalists who rarely sway with the song. There's a physicality to singing those words together. There is a spiritual power in the music that draws some to become Unitarian Universalists. We do not have to sign the hymns. We just are asked to join in creating together their presence in our shared experience. And some will want to do that in the choir. The reason that most people go to Unitarian Universalist churches, deep down, is community. There is a point in most lives when there is a craving for community, to be with people who share your perspective and hope for the future, to be in a community where you're not isolated, but a participant, sharing life together. For some of us, this happens in one's 20s, when the gatherings in classes or sports have faded away to be replaced with marriage or coupling, perhaps children and work. There's a longing to be connected regularly with a community that shares your attitude toward life to feel connected. What makes Unitarian Universalist community unique is that there's no requirement to conformity. One can be believed differently from the majority and still be affirmed and be an active participant. That, more than anything else, is what makes a Unitarian Universalist congregation. You accept that others will have differing perspectives, and there is no obligation to agree or disagree with them. You are affirmed as community members. Our principles tell us that we affirm and promote a free and open search for truth and meaning, and acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. These are important points to our religious identity and community. This congregation is the 20th Unitarian Universalist community that I have served, worked at, attended regularly, or been a member of. In those contexts, I have been in a big city, suburban, and small town Unitarian Universalist churches. I have worshiped mostly with congregations that were theologically diverse in worship, like this one, and also with 3 Unitarian Universalist congregations that were liberal Christian in their worship. One might imagine that everyone in the congregation was liberal Christian, but that was not so. In that church in New Hampshire, the Bible was read every Sunday, the Lord's Prayer recited, and some of the members were atheists. They did not feel required to believe in everything that was spoken. There was a more typically theologically mixed Unitarian Universalist congregation only 4 or 5 miles away from their church building. Yet one woman told me that she felt more comfortable with the rhythm of Christian worship for its familiarity, and she did not feel compelled to agree with everything presented. She was a Unitarian Universalist and knew that she could participate without having to agree. Other members of the congregation respected her journey without judgment, and she lived in sacred community. These are aspects of being in a Unitarian Universalist church. They are the most common reasons that people join with us. There are undoubtedly other reasons, but these are the ones most frequently cited in congregations with which I have been affiliated. After the service today, we will be gathering for our congregation's annual meeting. It is a time when the church elects leaders, discusses aspects of congregational life, understands some of the features of the church year that begins on the first day of July, and approves the budget that will finance church operations. This coming church year is important, possibly more than recent church years. You will need to consider the new directions in ministry and set priorities. You will be considering your future ministries and what you would like in a vocational minister. This coming year will be my last year with you, and I will be more like an interim minister than a developmental minister. Common wisdom from the developmental ministry group I spoke with at the Transitional Ministers Retreat last month is that the last year of the developmental ministry should be more like an interim ministry, preparing the congregation to work with another minister and to envision new directions and to face the future with anticipation and zest. So why talk about these things that draw people to Unitarian Universalist churches and keep them there? In the midst of our busyness, we need sometimes to consider the life of this congregation, what drove us into this community, and what keeps us here. In your annual meeting, you are here to strengthen this congregation, to encourage its survival and prosperity for the future. The Lehigh Valley needs a Unitarian Universalist presence. Your congregation is absolutely vital. May our work together strengthen the bonds of human kinship and build a sustainable future for this church. So be it. Blessed be. Amen.